Welcome again, YouTube friends. Today we have a project for these guys. We got 3 little rabbits in there, and then we got the mama, which is the white rabbit there, and then we got the daddy rabbit back there. They each need their own cage. We're going to build a cage that will house the mama and the daddy rabbit and the baby rabbits. And so that's what the project is today. I'll get some lumber out, get some tools, and I'll bring you back as I get started. Okay, I've started to put together a base frame. Frame is 4 foot wide along here, and then along the front side it is 7 foot. You're probably wondering why. I've decided to go with half a tree for the front legs. Well, that's going to be part of the weight balance on this, because from this point right here all along here to that area right there will be the actual cage. From this point here to the back will be the little huts where it's completely enclosed other than the doorway, so that they can get into shelter. And I want to put the leg right here, this spot right here, so that the back part of the cage, the back part of the hutch, is actually hanging over the back. And I thought that this would be a substantial amount of weight to hold the front of the rabbit cage down so that it didn't flip over. Now, in hindsight, I may have to put a couple stabilizer legs on the back, but I'm also going to put some grates along here and along the front side, I think, and that will just help it all tie in together. Of course, we'll have a 2x4 running from that point across to that point, making the same size of rectangle, and that will be the top of the cage and will hold the wire. So this is where I've gotten so far. I've managed to do a small amount of work in what seems to be a long amount of time, but I'm using what used lumber I have around as to make the rabbit cage a little cheaper in cost-wise, but also just to get this lumber used up on a project so that it's not laying around rotting. So I'll continue my work, and I'll bring you back with another update on where I'm at. As you can see, I put some blockers around this here. That is going to be to hold the welded wire, and I've done that on all 4 legs. It will add just a little bit of stability to that, where that's fastened to, but it's mainly just to fasten down this rolled wire, and it's welded wire. As you can see, it's 30 inches tall, 1.5 inch by 1 inch slots or holes. That's what you're seeing right here. This, from this wire to this little wire here, would be the 1 inch, and from that wire there to this one here would be a 1/2 inch. That is going to go down on the base, as so the rabbits can walk around on it, but the rabbit pellets or rabbit droppings will fall through the cage onto the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and put some pieces on, put some of this on. I don't know if I'm going to do it in 3 pieces, coming from this point here to this 2x4 in here, and then another from there to here, and one from here, or if I'll turn it and run it this way, along the whole thing in 1 piece. I'm kind of thinking maybe 1 piece would be better, as to try to staple down 3 pieces. Now, I'm not sure which way to run it, but we'll give it a shot and see what we come up with here. Okay, as you can see, I've started laying the welded wire down onto there, and I've cut it around these posts here, around this post here, and I've pulled it up and put just a little tension on it, and I've used these little staples to hold it down with, and they're just driven in, as you can see right here. There's one. You go along, and here's another one, and so on and so forth right there. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of an idea of what I'm doing here. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. You can see I've got a claw hammer in the holes of the netting, so that when I pull up, that pulls tension against that wire. So once I start pulling tension up on it, what I do is I slide this 2x4 block up here to apply that pressure for it to stay. I don't have my hammer set quite right. Try this again here. As you can see, I'm sliding that block forward, which is putting pressure up and pulling that netting tight. Over here, you can see it's no tension on it. Here, you can see that there's tension on it. And then what I'll do is I'll drive a staple in, putting it across those two wires, one going this way along there, and the other one going this way. I'll put it right there in that cross section to catch both of those wires, is to pull tight down onto it. And so far, I'm 1/3 of the way with it on there, starting on the second part of the 2/3 part, and then the ending piece, of course, down there. I decided to do it all in one piece so that it would all be tied together, and I wouldn't have to worry about maybe some sharp ends of the wire being cut, being in this area right here for the rabbits to get onto. So I'll do a little more work, and I'll bring you back for some progress report. Thank you again. Okay, you can see here I've went ahead and took a piece of plywood and cut some holes out for the entrance into the rabbit hutches, where the rabbit's going to be inside and out of the weather. And what I've done over here on this side is I've cut and laid 3/4 by, I believe this is 5. I ripped this down to 4 because when it get down to the outside here, as you can see, I'm laying these boards here. When I get to the outside edge here, I'm going to have about a 4.5 or 3.5 to 4 inch piece here. So I wanted to stagger the short board with the long board this way. And you can see there's a joint right here, but underneath of that is a 2x4 that they're screwed into. And I've done the same thing on this joint here at the end of this wider board. There's a joint there, and I've lapped it over the 2x4 as it runs right along in through here. And so that will help to carry the weight, and it won't want to warp there as badly, I'm hoping. Been some used lumber. This is 1x material that I had laying around to build this with, so I'm utilizing it, and I think it'll be just perfect for it. So we're going to continue some more the process of putting these boards down. You can see here, I'm going to lay this one here. This is a wider board here, and then it'll get screwed down in the same fashion the other ones did. We'll have a staggered joint right here over to this point here, and then there'll be another board runs along this side here, right along this edge here. probably getting to see my shadow, which hopefully it's not too big, blocking the whole sun. So here, and then this is a 3-inch board, and it will sit along in here, and that will finish up the back side of the floor of it. And then of course we'll build in the sides in here, and the back wall in here, and then we'll have hopefully a sloped roof across here, and then we'll have a roof over the top of here so they can be outside and have shade as well. So I'm going to continue on, and I'll bring you back when I have some more progress to show you. Okay, we're back with another progress report here. As you can see, we're planked all the way across here for the bottom of it. That will keep the rabbits from having the cold air and the wind on them, and they'll have a place in there. We think maybe one of them is going to be a mama. But anyways, I had a small miscalculation in boards here. You can see there's a seam along here, and it kind of cuts up at an angle like that, right across there. So I notched this other board in order to kind of fill in that little gap, bring it all together. But that is the finished product for the bottom of the rabbit hutches, and then I'll bring you back in some more progress here in a little bit and show you what more I can get done. Okay, I'm back here with another progress report, showing you exactly what I've done here. I've brought 2 uprights here, and then filled that in with a piece of 2x4. And I had enough of 3/4 inch plywood to plate that on the inside to make it real airtight and sealed up around the edges. It's the same plywood piece that I had here that I cut this front piece out. I did a little differently here. I also brought uprights, as you can see here, and then I planked these here up along this side here, planked that on the inside, and I did this as well over here on this side. Is planked there, and then of course frame, and we got it planked on the piece of plywood on the inside there. And so that's going to be the dividers for their houses. Now, I haven't decided how I'm quite going to do the back yet. I have a piece of plywood that I think that will go all the way along the back side. And then up here I'd like to hinge a door, basically, that would sit and hinge upward this way, like so. But we'll see how that works out with what material I've got left here. I'm going to need to put some type of support between each one of those walls. This would be the front side view of it again, the 3 entrances in. Now I've got some interesting items to use here that is going to go in the centers for the dividers here, on here, and here, and there'll be one on each end and the outside. Now I haven't exactly come up with in the grand scheme of things of how to close the front of this off, but it needs to have some kind of a slope on the top down here so that water runs off forward, I'm hoping, and the water will run off at that slope on the back and keep the rabbits nice and dry when it does rain. But we'll see what happens to the slope up here on the front, and we'll see what happens with the front up here. So I'm going to keep moving along here, and I'll bring you back in for another progress to see how we get along with building the rabbit hutch. Okay, we're back with another update on the rabbit condo. I've added along here 2x4 all the way along the back. I've added in some bracings up here at the top along these rails across the top of here, and this is so that I can put a lid on the top of that and be able to check in on the baby bunnies when they're born. I also, even though I didn't want to, I did have to add 2 legs there and there to help with the stabilization of it. It was a little back heavy, heavier than I thought it was going to be. But that's perfectly okay. I don't want the rabbit cage to tip over if we get some wind. So, as you can see, I've added all along here those filler pieces and bracing so that I can hinge the lid up here and make it latch back here. Also added in, this is just the first panel in the back of it here, and you can see it's coarse plywood. This was plywood I had left over from my decking when I changed out the decking. As you can see, it has a rotten spot in it, but we are only using what we can salvage out of it as far as good material. And so that should be enough to do the backing, and then the rabbit houses themselves, and then of course we have the front yet to figure out. So I'll continue working here and see what how further along I can get with it, and I'll bring you another update here as soon as I get some progress made. Well, it's the next day, and I did make some progress along the road here. We've got all the back into the rabbit houses themselves. You can see they're inside. That should be nice, keep them nice and dry, out of the weather and out of the wind. So this is basically going to be their whole dimensions of their little hut inside of here. This is where they'll be out of the weather. And as you move around to the front side, you can see we've made quite a bit of progress on the front. We've got the 1 inch by 2 inch welded wire along the front side, both of the sides, the front side. And you can see in here we've got this divider right in here. That divides off the individual outside areas for the rabbits. And kind of a neat little tool here. Don't know if I can show you real well, but you can see right in here there's a little band of galvanizing metal right there. And what that is one of these little clips like this. And then there's a pair of pliers that you install them with. So hold on just a second here. I'm going to put one in here and I'll show you exactly how it works. Now, as you can see here, you can just barely see there's that little silver or galvanized clip inside there. And what you do is you take your hands and you squeeze that together. And what those jaws do is curls the metal around whatever you hook it over. So if you can see that there, if I squeeze that, it wraps that right around the wire. And as you squeeze it tight, there's your clamp. So quite an ingenious little tool. I like to squeeze them pretty good to make sure they're good and snug on there. But that's kind of how that little tool works, and it's really an ingenious little tool. Makes connecting these wires, such as here, and you can see I used them down here along the bottom to connect it to the bottom wire. And on the sides, along here, you're going to see this spot right here. This was my practice run at trying to clip those wires together. It's a little difficult to get them to clip together, but once I figured it out, it was really great. Now up the sides here I've stapled it, and then along the inside here you can see that I've stapled it. So we've made really good progress. There's going to be some metal, metal roofing over the top of this. Now you might see all these little blocks and wonder what that's for. Well, I think one of two things is really I needed a spacer to give me a slope from this angle down to this angle for the water to run off. But I also wanted some type of ventilation so that the heat that does build up in the top will rise up and flow out the back. And there will be a metal cap that lays along here and then comes back down this edge, but will still be loose enough to push that air out, I think. Mainly it's spacing, but I'm hoping ventilation will help. I don't want the rabbits to get too warm. So this is the progress that I've made here yesterday evening and today. And so I'm going to go and see about locating some tin to put on the roof, and then last things will be is got to figure out lids for this. Want these to be able to open and close, and see about maybe putting some kind of little gate in here so that we can go through the front side to feed the rabbits. Their little feed pans will hang in here on the side of the fence, and I'll show you those once we get everything set up and get the rabbit hutch built. So I'll see about making some more progress and bring you back here in a little bit. Okay, I made some more progress. As you can see here, I've got metal all on top of the outside area, and I've wrapped it down around that tube before, to kind of protect it from the weather a little bit. And if you can see it, it's on a slight angle so that the water will run forward off of it when it rains. I went ahead and capped this backside where those blocks were. There were spaces in between the blocks, if you remember, and so I've capped that with some L trim. Not really sure what they call it, maybe flashing trim, not sure. I had it and it looked like it was work good, so that's what I did. I did cut this right along here, wrap this down over the edge as to protect from having sharp corners on it. So, and I did the same thing on the other side. Over on this side. And then I went ahead and wrapped the corner on this end as well. Now I've started making lids for the back, but I run into a slight issue with the lids being really flimsy, which I was hoping they wouldn't be, but I've come up with a solution. You can see I've pop riveted the hinges to the tin, but that also causes a issue with them wanting to not close properly. If you can see right down in there, that tin is kind of binding and it's putting stress on the hinges. If I back up just a little bit, you can see I let go of it and it kind of sticks. So the solution for that I've come up with is to put this trim along here to strengthen the door up. As you can see, it's still a little bit flexible, but it put enough resilience in it that I think it'll stay. And I put it on both ends, here and here, and then I've riveted the hinges back on so that this lip of this tin is covered. And if you can see in this spot right in here, that is where that tin was kind of catching and gouging into the wood. And hopefully by putting that trim on it, I think that it will solve the problem, allow the door to close properly. This is the trim that I'm using around it, and if you kind of look at it, is in a J. It follows the letter J. if you look at the end profile of it. So I think that that's why they call it J-trim. And I'm pop riveting that onto the top and the bottom of the door, or the lids. So I'll continue to work on those and see if I can make some progress in getting the lids done. And then the next step after the lids will be to put some type of an opening in the front here. Like I talked before, there should be, we want one in each one. Makes easier access to get to the food tray and the water. So I'm making some progress, and hopefully I'll finish this up today. I'll bring you back here just a little bit, show you some more progress. Okay, I'm back with the finished product here. You can see all the lids are on, and what I did was, in order to keep these closed, I used a call a barrel latch, and that slides back, which that allows that to open. And as you can see, I kind of made a little, just a homemade tab with a hole through it for that barrel latch to go through, and that keeps the lids closed. I've got one on each one. The only thing I wished I could have figured out how to do differently was, in order to open the ends, you have to open the middle. But that is partly because of the way I did want this to do, is overlap so that the water wouldn't run inside. So if you look there, you can see that laps down over that other ridge. And it does that on this side as well. But that does allow for those to be opened up and cleaned out. And we can kind of check and see when baby rabbits show up. So that's kind of the finished product there. You can see where I did mount the hinges to that board across the top of there. And we have, of course, gates in the front, so that you have access to the front of the cage as well. For food and water, excuse me. Now, I really didn't have an idea of what I was going to do with these, how to make these, until I actually did it. As you can see right there, this wire right up there, that one's the smaller wire. That is the same as this here, that's in the front across here, the 1 inch by 2 inch. But this heavier gauge is wire that was on a tomato cage. And that was my wife's idea. So I went ahead and used that wire, and I bent a metal frame all the way around. And then I just attached the wire to it. And of course what I used for the hinges is the excess wire. You can see that right there by my finger here. That excess wire bends around and hooks, and that's what makes the hinge. And so we've got a door there, a door there, and a door there. So this is a complete finished product of my rabbit cages. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like this video, leave a comment and let me know what you thought. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and I'll have new videos. Try to put out one every week. This one has taken just a little bit longer than I anticipated building this, but thank you for watching, and hope you enjoyed.